Oh, there's a competition going on.
House Leader.
Yes. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I want to thank the member from Manchester Southern, Mr. Bunting, for his very data-focused presentation. We'll now have the Member of Parliament from St. Elizabeth North Eastern, Ms. Zulieka Jess, who will now join us for her presentation.
Oh. You're getting there. You're getting there. Slowly, you're getting there.
Just take no permission to speak from a seat. You may go ahead, Member Jess. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Permission to speak from a seat. Permission granted. Permission to speak from a seat that is not my own. Permission granted. Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I rise to make my maiden contribution to this sectoral debate, I must start by thanking God for his guidance and grace. I wish to thank the Leader of the Opposition, Mark Golding, for the confidence he has placed in me to shadow the critical portfolio of justice. Even though I must confess that at first I wasn't sure if it was a promotion or punishment. Either way, I promise to defend justice fiercely. I come to this role in my 15th year as a senior attorney with diverse experience and perspectives. I wish to thank my incredible hardworking team on the ground, led by my councillors, Councillor Everton Fisher, Caretaker Maurice Nemard, but particularly, Madam Speaker, Councillors Champy Myers and Donovan Pagan, who have been my shield and my protector. I wish to thank my phenomenal family in Northeastern St. Elizabeth. Thank you for saying yes to Jess and a young fresh baby. I promise to represent your voices stridently, even if some of the phone calls I receive are about asking me to personally help you to find a wife. Or to personally reimburse you for the damage done to your vehicle by the potholes along Santa Cruz. To my friends and long-suffering family, thank you for putting up with my long days and late nights on the political battlefield. You are my anchor and my sanity. Madam Speaker, this maiden presentation is not mine alone. It belongs to the people of Northeastern St. Elizabeth and to every Jamaican demanding a fair, transparent, and accessible justice system. I am deeply honored to speak on their behalf today. But we cannot speak about a fair and accessible justice system when the physical infrastructure of our courts is an absolute disgrace. 7 months after Hurricane Melissa, the justice system in St. Elizabeth and Westmoreland isn't recovering. It is battering for life. So today, I must speak on behalf of the judges, the court staff, the attorneys, and the thousands of ordinary Jamaicans who are being forced to search for justice in ruins. Madam Speaker, let us look at the proud parish of St. Elizabeth, from which I now hail, the historic Black River Courthouse was battered by Hurricane Melissa. And what was this ministry's brilliant emergency plan? To cram the displaced staff into the Santa Cruz Courthouse, which was never designed to carry this capacity. Go to Santa Cruz right now, Madam Speaker. The conditions are utterly degrading. In January of this year, court staff were driven to fury because they were being forced to work in a building with no running water, no water for sanitation, no water for dignity. How can this administration boast of a modern justice system when our court workers cannot even wash their hands? Under this government, Madam Speaker, the wheels of justice aren't just turning slowly, they are grinding to a dirty halt. But the lack of water isn't even the worst part. The security infrastructure under this administration has completely collapsed. Just months ago in Santa Cruz, it was reported in the news that a member of the public barged straight into the court office and grabbed a box of legal files. It took the court staff themselves, who are ordinary workers, not trained security personnel, to physically fight off the intruder and knock the files from his hands. This happened at the Santa Cruz Courthouse in January of this year. But let us move on down the road, Madam Speaker, to Westmoreland. The Westmoreland Parish Court is out of commission. Initially, the minister boldly declared in November 2025 that the resources were available and that they were looking to secure a contractor under emergency procurement to restore the courthouse in the shortest possible time. But a few moments later, what do we hear, Madam Speaker? Now the minister says it will be too costly to repair. A total shameless flip-flop. Madam Speaker, the minister's assurances carry no weight. First, the money was there to do the repair. Now the building cannot be repaired. This isn't governance. It is pure double talk designed to hide delay and incompetence. They are talking in circles to hide the fact that they are dropping the ball and the people need justice. In light of the fact that the Westmoreland Parish Court is compromised, ordinary citizens are now forced to cross parish lines into Hanover to access the circuit court all the way in Lucy. Madam Speaker, think of the staggering economic punishment. Madam Speaker, think of the staggering economic punishment this inflicts on the people of Westmoreland. Madam Speaker, I see that those on the government aisle do not wish for me to speak the truth today, but we are going to talk about justice. Think of the astronomical expense for jurors, for litigants, for lawyers who must find transportation and meals just to travel back and forth to Lucy day after day because there is no court in Westmoreland to accommodate circuit. Madam Speaker, this government has turned the right to a fair trial into an endurance trek. Madam Speaker, they can howl all they want, but until they fix the justice crisis in the West, we will speak about this in the halls of this Parliament. This ministry has turned the right to a fair trial into an endurance trek. This is not administering justice. This is navigating an obstacle course. The Minister of Justice speaks about first-class justice system and modernization of the justice system, but I challenge the minister today, leave your air-conditioned office in Kingston, come down to Santa Cruz, come down to Westmoreland, work in a port where there is no running water, pay the taxi fare from Lucy, from Sablamar to Lucy, and tell the people why they should tolerate this injustice. Madam, thank God for the late great Roger Clark's legacy. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, don't take my word for it. The Chief Justice himself stated that this ministry is an unreliable partner. This statement was made after it was revealed that the judiciary had to use its own budget to carry out emergency court repairs in Western Jamaica to give judges a place to work. When the courts have to stop focusing on clearing backlogs and instead start acting like building contractors just to put a roof over a judge's head, that is not a success story. It is a total system failure, and the people need justice. Madam Speaker, there is no context in the world that would make the words unreliable partner sound good when they come from the head of the judiciary. Those words aren't opposition talking points. That is a direct, unprecedented indictment from Chief Justice Brian Sykes. When the highest judge in the land publicly states that the judiciary cannot be trusted to provide basic functional infrastructure, that is a vote of no confidence. Hurricane Melissa was an act of nature, but this delay in restoring our courts is an act of sheer incompetence. We are not blaming the minister for the hurricane. We are blaming the minister for the total absence of a recovery plan. It does not take 7 months to connect a water tank so that court workers can wash their hands. It doesn't take 7 months to post 1 or 2 police officers outside a courthouse to secure court files. Madam Speaker, if the Chief Justice of Jamaica can find the resources to fix the court infrastructure, what is the minister doing with his? And if he has none, is it that logistics has prevented the good Prime Minister from directing some of the barely touched disaster recovery funds to restore access to justice in these hurricane-affected countries? you, Madam Speaker, justice under this government is a disaster in need of recovery. I urge the Minister to commission and fund an emergency infrastructural and security audit of all rural courthouses across Jamaica. We demand immediate police security deployment to the Santa Cruz courthouse. We demand clear timelines and urgent allocations for the construction of the St. Elizabeth and Westmoreland Parish Courts so the people can access justice. Madam Speaker, I turn very quickly to an issue that I dub the legal aid injustice. Too many ordinary Jamaicans are being completely locked out of the courts because this administration refuses to expand the categories of cases covered by legal aid. The legal aid framework is rigidly structured to primarily cover criminal matters. But what does the data actually say? The data shows that the vast majority of citizens requesting legal aid are begging for help with civil matters over criminal matters. According to the Legal Aid Council, 90% of legal requests received from members of the public are for civil matters, particularly divorces tied to incidents of domestic abuse. Madam Speaker, access to justice cannot be a half measure. When a government limits legal aid to a narrow band of cases, it effectively closes the doors of the court to the poor. We see the consequences every single day in our courts. Unrepresented litigants struggling to understand complex legal rules, overwhelmed judges trying to balance the scales, and ultimately a breakdown of public trust in the rule of law. According to the Chief Justice's Civil Division Statistics Report, over 16,000 new civil cases are filed in the parish court every single year. But the report also shows that in up to 70% of those civil cases, at least one party is completely without a lawyer, forced to face a judge completely on their own. Madam Speaker, it is a David versus Goliath battle where the state refuses to give David a sling, not even a stone. What makes this absolutely worse, Madam Speaker, is that it has absolutely nothing to do with lack of resources. During the recent Standing Finance Committee right here at Gordon House, the Minister of Justice openly admitted on the record that the money is there. He proudly declared that the ministry satisfied all claims by attorney and has the fiscal space. Therefore, let us call it what it really is: a total lack of political will and complete indifference to the plight of the poor. The money is there. The budget has the space. The minister confessed that the funds exist. Yet this administration chooses to let those funds sit idle while poor Jamaicans are crushed by legal fees or forced to forfeit their rights because they cannot afford an attorney. The people do not want any more excuses, Madam Speaker. We do not want public relations mobile units that can only give legal advice but leave citizens defenseless when a civil trial actually starts. We demand that the government stop hoarding these resources, listen to the data from its own agencies, and immediately amend the regulations to expand legal aid categories to cover civil matters. Stop locking the poor out of justice. Madam Speaker, I move to address a deep inequity in our community justice system. The total lack of financial support, stipend, or expense coverage for Jamaica's justices of the peace. The Ministry of Justice expects over 7,000 JPs to render strictly voluntary service. They are forbidden. The Ministry of Justice expects over 12,000 JPs to render strictly voluntary service. They are forbidden from accepting any payment or reward, yet the state relies on them to process bail, to visit lockups, to conduct mediation. Active JPs must currently pay for their own stationery, printer, ink, travel costs to courts and prisons out of their own pockets, and even fund their expenses to serve in court as lay magistrates. Madam Speaker, this is not sustainable voluntarism. It is institutional exploitation. Madam Speaker, I do not yield. I do not yield, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Minister
Member
of
Jess.
Justice continues
Member
to
Jess.
blindly
Member Jess? Member Jess? Member Jess? Please sit. Please sit. Member Jess, please sit. Listen, you know, if you would only learn the standing orders, you see, members, I would so appreciate it. Member Jess, please take your seat. Minister Chuck, please quote the standing order number on which you are raising a point of order.
The member is misleading the House.
That is not a. That is not a.
Go ahead.
You need to stop. Member Jess, I have not turned your mic on so that your time does not run. And I'm using this opportunity to reiterate what is not a point of order is misleading the House. Points of order are statements made in a debate that contravenes the rule of the House. And therefore, points of interruptions, which is subsection 2 or B, are requiring the member on their feet to sit and allow the courtesy of the other member saying what their point is of interruption or clarification. And so this is another teaching moment for us. In addition to which, since I've already interrupted the member on her feet, members, allow her to do her presentation as is required in silence in the House. Members, I am sure that I'll soon complete my research in dropping some additional instruments in the House that help us to hear all of these comments that I can barely hear up here. I'm sure the public would love to know what we are saying, and I would love to know too. Member for St. Elizabeth Northeast, You may continue. Member, in order not to interrupt you, I'll ask the assistant clerk to add your additional time at the end, so the mic will, the monitor will go off when you're finished.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Justice continues to flatly reject proposals for a stipend for JPs. He calls it a pure voluntary post, ignoring that the cost of paper, gas, and electricity makes it a luxury only the rich can afford. True justice cannot run on charity alone. The opposition demands a modernized framework for our JPs. Madam Speaker, this administration is completely out of step with global trends. There is clear established international precedent for the financial facilitation of JPs, proving that voluntarism does not require a person to compromise their own livelihood. The opposition urges the ministry to look across the globe and recognize how modern democracies practice or protect their JPs. In the UK, in Australia, in Canada, in those jurisdictions, JPs are also volunteers, but they receive a loss of earnings allowance and travel expenses. They do not pay out of pocket to serve the Crown. The state actively reimburses them for the costs incurred while delivering justice. The opposition is not calling for a lavish salary. We're calling for an enforceable, transparent stipend modeled after international best practices. It is time to treat Jamaica's JPs with the global standard of dignity they deserve. We pay notaries public to notarize documents, and we pay judges to hear cases. Why shouldn't we offer our JPs a stipend to cover out-of-pocket expenses? Madam Speaker, the primary duty of this House is to pass laws that deliver justice, not absurdity. I turn now to address a glaring crisis in our judicial system. The Firearms Prohibition, Restriction and Regulation Act requires urgent common sense amendments. I would be the first to join any sensible effort to be tough on crime because it is a monster that must be tamed and eliminated. That said, it befuddles me as to why we would seek to use a hammer to hit a mosquito. This administration passed a law so poorly thought out that it has ceased to protect the public and has instead made criminals out of non-violent Jamaicans, including creatives. Just weeks ago, Madam Speaker, a music producer was slapped with a mandatory minimum 15-year sentence, not for a real weapon, but for imitation firearms used as props in music videos. Not a single bullet could ever leave those plastic barrels. Yet this government used a 15-year sledgehammer to crush a creative professional who posed no threat to public safety. A prominent defense attorney recently lamented the sheer absurdity of this regime by revealing that the state actually wasted time and precious resources conducting ballistic tests on a cardboard cutout of a gun. Cardboard, Madam Speaker. Under this government, a cardboard cutout is being taken to a government lab to test if it can fire a bullet. Government forensic experts are performing ballistics on cardboard. Madam Speaker, this Parliament must act without delay. We must urgently amend this law to restore full unrestricted sentencing discretion to our judges. And we must make these amendments retroactive, so those currently suffering under this legislative failure can have their sentences reviewed. Madam Speaker, If we needed any further proof that the administration of firearms in this country is broken from the top down, we need look no further than the Integrity Commission's own report 37 of 2026. That report tabled yesterday found that the Firearm Licensing Authority, under the watch of its Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Shane Dallin, presided over a vault where ammunition belonging to private citizens went missing. A computer system that was deliberately manipulated to destroy the livelihood of a licensed dealer using the identity of a man who was already dead. And a server whose catastrophic failure conveniently erased the very evidence that would have identified who gave the order. Madam Speaker, a man who runs an authority where the dead are used to falsify records, where vault doors cannot account for what is inside them, and where evidence disappears without consequence, has no business holding public office. The People's National Party therefore calls unequivocally and without reservation for Mr. Shane Dallin to resign immediately. The People's National Party therefore calls unequivocally and without reservation for Mr. Shane Dallin to tender his immediate resignation. The people of Jamaica deserve leadership that upholds the law, not leadership that the Integrity Commission itself has found wanting. Madam Justice, Madam Speaker, the people need justice. But Madam Speaker, justice is not about a sentence handed down in a courtroom. Justice is a lived experience. This administration likes to paint a beautiful picture of justice, but my job today is not to admire the paintwork. It is to open the hood and examine the engine. The engine of justice is making a rattling sound sparked by an alarming rise in police fatal killings. And let me be very, very clear. I will forever defend the police's right to defend themselves when faced with deadly force from criminal elements. But the latest Indicom data shows that 133 persons have already been shot and killed by members of the security forces since the start of this year alone. Madam Speaker, the engine of justice is rattling. This rattling requires us to confront the dangerous rhetoric coming from the very top of our justice system. Instead of demanding accountability, the Minister of Justice recently responded to these tragedies by declaring that the law allows police to use reasonable force, including deadly force, to stop a fleeing suspect. To tell a grieving, terrified nation that running away gives the state a legal right to execute you on the streets is a grave mistake. The engines of justice demand protection of the right to due process. The engines of justice demand a fair trial. The engines of justice demand the presumption of innocence. Running away must never become an automatic death sentence, nor can we allow the ministry to rewrite the law to justify street-side executions. Madam Speaker, equally troubling is the police commissioner's dismissive response. Madam Speaker, might I have your protection? Madam Speaker, equally troubling is the police commissioner's dismissive response, defending police failures as being viewed through the lens of hindsight. But when lives are lost, evaluating police actions is not an exercise in hindsight. It is a demand for foresight. It is a demand for training. It is a demand for the use of body-worn cameras, and it is a demand for basic human rights. When the police commissioner, in the wake of public outcry, tells rank and file officers not to become paralyzed by criticism, he is building a wall of institutional arrogance. He is telling his men that they are above the law, above the people, above accountability. Madam Speaker, the people need justice. Following the devastation of Hurricane Melissa, our people were promised relief. Donors sacrificed and gave generously to help families rebuild. Over 1.44 billion in cash donations poured into government hands. Yet according to the Auditor General's report, this administration only spent a measly, insulting 1.8% of those funds. While many Jamaicans are still sleeping under tarpaulins, while schools remain damaged, while small business owners are struggling to rebuild, millions of dollars sit idle in government hands. Only 1.8% has trickled down to poor Jamaicans who lost everything. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister refused to admit his failure by stating that they wanted to get the perishables out first. Is this a confession, Madam Speaker? Is this a confession that this government does not know how to multitask? What is the Prime Minister's explanation for unused relief monies from burial 2 years ago? Madam Speaker, the people need justice. I turn very quickly to the $1 billion solidarity program that was announced to rescue our Jamaican people. Yet the Ministry of Labour just issued a press release claiming that $533 million was returned to the consolidated fund. They tell us that nobody pocketed the money. They tell us that returning $533 million to the consolidated fund was simply a legal requirement under standard financial regulations because the fiscal year ended. In other words, Madam Speaker, the ministry's best excuse is literally, we didn't steal it. We were just too slow to spend it. But Madam Speaker, to the grandmother in my constituency who went to bed hungry last night, waiting for that $20,000 grant that the government promised, this rebuttal is a distinction without a difference. Whether it is called pocketing, reallocating, or returning to the consolidated fund, the bottom line is that the money did not reach the people, and the people need justice. Madam Speaker, when 75% of the persons targeted to benefit from that $20,000 grant did not get access to those funds, that is not justice. That is the government acting as both the giver and the ultimate taker, and the people need justice. Madam Speaker, justice means different things for different people. Justice is a smooth road for the people of northeastern St. Elizabeth who just want to reach home safely. Neglected roads are not just an inconvenience, they are a denial of justice. The continued neglect of our critical crossings is unacceptable. Windsor Bridge is on the verge of collapse and Broadband Bridge is a ticking time bomb. This is not just a failure of engineering. This is a failure of infrastructural justice. The urgent repair of these bridges is a matter of life and death, and the people of northeastern St. Elizabeth need justice. The absolute peak of injustice, the ultimate betrayal of public trust is the scandalous execution of the Spark program in northeastern St. Elizabeth. The former Member of Parliament handpicked 10 roads for repair. All 10 roads were picked from one single division. One division, and it happens to be the one JLP controlled division. Meanwhile, the three PNP controlled divisions have been complete.
House leader, House leader, if the opposition does not stop, there will be no extra time given, even if requested by the House leader. So I would encourage the members of the opposition to please be quiet. And Miss Burchell, Member Burchell, could you kindly not do that? Would you like me to go back to your member from South St. James? Inappropriate. House leader, members of the opposition, members of the House, the members' time for St. Elizabeth Southeast was already increased because I said to her, I did not want to break her again because I'd stopped her when Minister asked for a point of order. So the clock, no, it doesn't matter what you have left. I am giving her 1 minute to wrap up. Okay, House leader, no additional time. No additional time. No additional time. House leader, don't turn your mic on again, member. Member, do not turn your mic on again. House leader. House leader. Member, if you turn your mic on again, you will not get any additional time. If you don't obey when you are spoken to in the House, you will not be afforded the courtesies to extend. The House leader came up, he asked for additional time. I've asked you to be quiet, I've asked you not to turn your mic on again, and you refuse. No, because the House leader needs to speak. I told her not to turn it on. House leader, please turn your mic on.
Madam Speaker, I'm asking that the member be given 2 minutes to complete her presentation.
Members, so you hear, I extended the member's time already, and I asked the member to take her seat and do not turn on her mic. I'm asking, when instructions are given in the House, that we abide by the instructions. Question is that the member be given 2 minutes to complete. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Member from St. Elizabeth, Northeast, you may proceed. Turn your mic on.
The 3 PNP controlled divisions in northeastern St. Elizabeth have been completely left off the Spark program. Not one single road was selected from the Braze River division. Not one single road was selected from Silo division. Not one single road was selected from Balaclava division. Not one. The 3 divisions represented by the People's National Party have been completely starved of resources on the Spark. They have received 0 road allocations on the Spark. This is not justice. This is political victimization. This is the weaponization of public funds. This is the weaponization of public funds to punish people for how they vote. It is corrupt. It is malicious. It is a dangerous denial of justice to the thousands of people in northeastern St. Elizabeth, and the people need justice. Madam Speaker, we envision a justice system where if you run in fear from a system that terrorizes you, you are not executed on the streets. We see a Jamaica where top-paying jobs in multi-billion-dollar state agencies are distributed by merit and not by DNA. True justice cannot exist when the hiring process somehow conveniently narrows down to a branch on the family tree. Justice belongs equally to the farmer in Monique, the vendor in Santa Cruz, the fisherman in Black River, and the child growing up in every district across this country. Under the leadership of Mark Golding, that is the Jamaica we seek to build, and that is the fight we will wage from the halls of this parliament to the street. Madam Speaker, even the late great Bustamante would agree that this administration is not practicing equal rights and justice. I rest my case.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank the member from St. Elizabeth Northeastern for her presentation and all the members who presented today. I want to ask you to suspend the debates for the sectoral debates.
Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Previously we had asked that the agenda be suspended and we went directly to public business. I'm asking that we recommit the agenda items from the beginning.
Question is that we recommit the agenda items. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Clerk. Statement by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House are the following: Annual Performance Report of the Minister of Local Government